So my name is Jaime. I'm with Wicked Wrench Company, which is located in South Elgin, Illinois. My sister and I own and operate this automotive repair shop here out in the suburbs of Chicago. We're unique because we're one of the only female ran and owned automotive shops in probably the Chicagoland area. So I started doing these classes when we first opened, especially for teenagers and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, so they could learn about their cars. I have automotive background experience for over 20 years, and I built this PDF packet that Blue Island should have forwarded to you on email, so you can kind of follow through and always have a reference guide. And again, this is just basics. We're just going over basic stuff with cars today that a lot of people need to know, especially the younger drivers, so they can understand what their cars need and how to change the tire. So we're going to pretty much follow along with this. And after every section, we can take questions or at the end, whatever's better for the library and what they want to do. So to start this morning, we're going to talk about fluids for your vehicle. I'm sorry, which is in the first section here. So I said this probably mostly because of the younger people that just get their licenses. That vehicles need oil as much as they need fuel. So especially younger drivers, they're not getting brand new cars, they're getting older cars that are usually over 5 years old. Cars will leak or burn oil more than a new car will. So it's important that you do know what type of oil that your vehicle takes. And this is actually a Buick Lucerne. I have the hood open on it, so we're going to use this as our example car today. This is the oil cap, which is on top of the engine here, which just screws off like this. But on this oil cap is actually, it tells you 5W30. So this is important because most caps actually state that on there. I don't know why this one isn't coming free.
Okay. Oh.
Twisting. It shouldn't do that. Okay. Well, this one should twist free, but it's not at the moment. So it says 5W30 on here. That's the type of oil that the vehicle takes. There's some cars that's going to say 520 or 020, which is a very common synthetic oil today is 020. Right next to it, this yellow thing here is the actual engine dipstick. And we're going to learn how to check oil today also. So the key to checking your vehicle's oil is to make sure that it's on level ground. The vehicle is off. You pull the dipstick out. You take something to wipe it. You want to clear it first because it could be halfway up. You put it back in, and that's how you're going to get your good reading. So we let it sit in there a second, re-pull it, and then we look at the oil level. So now this dipstick, I'm not seeing anything on here. So the dots right here, it should be towards the top end of the hash marks. If it's down here, that means this is a full quart. So this isn't registering. So this car is low on oil. So actually what we're going to do, we're going to put some oil in it. In most cars, you're going to want to use a funnel to add oil in, otherwise you're going to spill it all over the top of the engine, which is then going to go down on the exhaust. So I expect that it's kind of got a long beak on here so it doesn't spill. So I'm going to add some oil in this engine. And it goes right there where the cap is. Now, I've always told people, once you get an oil change, I think it's really, really important to check it right afterwards. Because a lot of times, these oil change places are doing oil changes so fast, sometimes mistakes can happen. So it's good to always double check that and check the levels. So when you get your oil change, just pull off into a parking lot and check the level, make sure it's good. I've had several customers come to me saying, my oil's low. I just had my oil change a couple weeks ago. And in fact, it wasn't topped off at their oil change. So You might actually have to add more, but okay, now it's registering a little bit on the dipstick. We still probably have to put a half quart in. So really, when you pull your dipstick, you don't want it to look how it just looked. You want to, there should be oil on it. And if you don't know what type of oil your vehicle takes, the best thing to do is pull out your owner's manual and it'll tell you exactly what type of oil your car takes. You don't want to overfill your oil either, because the car can act up if your engine oil is overfilled. It can shake and act a little erratic. And don't forget to make sure your cap is screwed all the way on, because if it isn't, it can pop off and then the oil can come out of the engine, creating a huge mess. So there are some newer cars today, European cars, that actually don't have dipsticks, that are being checked in cabin inside the car with the electronics. So I think cars are going to be moving that way, where you won't have this at all. It's basically getting checked inside with a couple pushes of a couple buttons. My car's that way. I have a Mini Cooper and my sister has a BMW, and you have to check everything inside the vehicle. So, and there's how to check engine oil. It explains it. It explains the dipstick, where it should be. If we turn the page, it explains the oil levels, which we just went over. This is the type of different examples of dipsticks and different types of oil. So this is a nice clean oil on the dipstick. It almost looks like vegetable oil, very clean. Sometimes it can be hard to see or read because it's so clean. This one here, it says coolant in oil. If you pull your dipstick and it ever looks like it's milky, that means there's coolant in your oil. You need to go see a mechanic right away, because that's not right and should never look like that. The no oil, which we had an example already of, right here, nothing showing on the dipstick. That means you're a minimum of 1 quart to 2 quarts low, which means get oil in your engine right away. Oil level low and dirty. So it's down by the bottom circle, which means this is the low point. Dirty means it almost looks like chocolate syrup. So if you pull your dipstick and it looks like chocolate syrup, you're probably due for your oil change. All right. Now, check transmission fluid. So a lot of cars don't have dipsticks for transmission today. They started getting rid of that in the mid 2000s. So if it doesn't have a dipstick, that has to be checked by a mechanic shop or wherever you have your car serviced. Transmissions, if they're even 1 quart or a half a quart low, rather, they can start slipping and having a problem, and you will feel something horrible. This particular car actually has a transmission dipstick. This one's black in color. It's towards the back. Most transmission dipsticks will be on the back side of the engine compartment, and they can be red in color or black, but they're usually the furthest most dipstick. And in order to check transmission fluid, it's sort of the same concept as engine oil, but the car has to be on. The car should be at operating temperature, so meaning 10 or 15 minutes. You pull the dipstick, you clear it just like you do with your engine oil. You put it back in for your read. Obviously, like I said, the car would be on. And then you pull and read, and then see where the level is. Now, if your transmission fluid is low, it's kind of funny, but you actually have to add it in the dipstick tube itself. So there is no quart like the engine oil. It actually goes into the tube. And again, you will need a funnel, because there's no way you're going to be able to pour it just in there. The other thing about that is if the transmission fluid is low, there's a reason why it's low. It just doesn't magically become low. It's not like engine oil. Engine oil will burn, it can seep, it can leak. Transmission fluid is a completely closed system. It should never, ever have a variant in level. If it does, you got to go see your mechanic, because there's a leak somewhere. And any kind of leak in the transmission system can be very detrimental to the transmission itself. So, and a lot of cars today have the transmission coolers in the radiator. So if the radiator goes bad and it starts leaking or starts having a problem, it can affect the transmission. Transmission fluid is dark red in color, but power steering fluid can also be dark red. So basically, wherever you park, if you ever pull away and you see puddles of anything, it's not good. Whether if it's red or if it's engine oil or if it's clear. The only time a car should leak anything is in the summer when it's super hot and you have your air conditioning on. There can be a puddle of water on your car, which is just condensation coming through the air conditioning system. And some cars, it could be quite a bit, where it could be scary where you pull away. You actually have, it looks like a full quart on the ground. That it is very possible cars do that. So. All right, moving on. We're going to talk about antifreeze in vehicles or coolant, whichever you refer it to. So now coolant is a very touchy subject because different manufacturers use different coolants. So General Motors antifreeze is a orangish pink color. It's called Dexcool. Ford can use a gold, yellow, or orange color. Toyota uses a pink. Honda uses a blue. Audi uses a purple. So there's all different colors of antifreeze, and there's a reason for it. It's all different. None of it's the same. Chemically, the engineers of the vehicles have designed these cars to use that type of antifreeze for a reason. So it's important to know what your car takes as far as coolant goes, because if it ever needs to be added in by you, shops know what type of coolant your car takes. They're going to go with what the manufacturer recommends per vehicle. I don't really myself believe in the universal antifreezes. I would rather put water in than a universal antifreeze. So this vehicle is a Dexcool. This is an overflow tank right here for the coolant system, which there's always a max and minimum line on here. This one's a little bit harder to read. This tank is not quite as translucent, but you can see where the level is. If you ever notice that, let's say you lose heat in your car, the first thing to do is check to see if you have antifreeze in your vehicle. Newer cars today have what's called an overflow tank. They're not adding into the radiator, they're adding into the overflow tank. If it looks like there's none in there, then what I would do is I would go to an auto parts store, use your owner's manual, or ask somebody at the counter to find out what type of coolant your car takes. Let the car sit at least an hour or two before opening and adding. Top it off. Find a mechanic. Again, coolant is a closed system. If it's low, there's a reason why it's low. So that means either you have a hose problem, a water pump, something's going on inside the coolant system of the car. So I mean, I'm not talking about an inch low. I'm talking like if it's more than an inch low and it's constantly going low, there's a problem. So, and again, it can affect your heat. Now, if two different antifreezes are mixed, like let's say it's the green antifreeze mixed with the Toyota pink antifreeze, a chemical reaction can happen and it can start gumming up inside hoses or in the engine or in the heater core, which is inside the dashboard, and it can cause problems. You can have cloggages, you can have lack of heat, it can eat up the heater core from the inside, and then it can start leaking. So if we refer to the picture with the blue on here, it says Sears. This is the coolant system. It's a generic picture, but this is the overflow tank on the car. This is the radiator. Those are the fans. This is the engine. This is a water pump. This is the heater core. Now, it has tons of hoses and passages it goes to, and the heater core is actually in the dashboard of the car. So if this gets gummed up, it would have to get flushed out. If it starts leaking, it has to be replaced, the heater core. In order to replace the heater core, the whole dashboard has to come out of the car. So it's not a fun job. That's why it's important to stick with type of antifreeze goes in the car. $20 is usually the normal price for a gallon of antifreeze. It's worth just paying the $20 for the proper antifreeze rather than having the dashboard ripped out for about $1,500. So that's how important it is for the different types of antifreezes. If a mechanic ever tells you you have oil in your antifreeze, it will look something like this. So that's inside the overflow tank. So there can be a couple different reasons why that would happen, but either way, it's not good. Okay, so it can mean you need intake manifold gaskets. You might have a blown head gasket, oil coolers bad, radiators bad, you know, something along those lines. But this does happen, and again, it's not good. So we're gonna go to power steering fluid next, which not all cars have power steering fluid today. Some cars are electric, so they don't have power steering fluid. It's all an electric system. So each cap here obviously means something. So this was our overflow tank for our coolant, which usually, normally a lot of cars is going to be on the right side of the car. There are some that are, the overflow tanks are right here in front. This is the power steering fluid here. This is the brake fluid here. So there's pictures on here. So this has a steering wheel. So that's pretty generic for power steering right there is what that is. Just like anything else, the cap just comes off like this, and it's got like a little level indicator. So that's where power steering glows. And again, now power steering is a funny thing too. Some there, you can walk into a store and you'll see power steering fluid in a bottle that says power steering fluid and it's clear. Or some cars actually take transmission fluid in the power steering. So again, it's important to refer back to the car's owner's manual if you need to top something off. Normally, when you're topping something off, you're going to the mechanic anyway. You just want to top it off to make sure you can get there and the system is full because you don't want anything to go dry. So if the power steering is leaking, again, normally it's red or clear. The first indication of something going on with your power steering is if you get out into your car in the morning and you go to turn the steering wheel and you hear a sound like this, like that. It's like a high-pitched sound when you turn the steering wheel. That means there's lack of fluid and there's a reason. So it's either the power steering pump, the lines, or the rack pinion causing the problem. So again, then you have to go see a mechanic. So. All right, so we're going to talk about brake fluid, which is right here. There's two types of brake fluid that are normal. There's .3 and now there's .4. There's higher performance cars will use .5, but we won't even go there right now. So, and again, the brake fluid, you can usually see the level on it. There's usually markings. You can open it up and look in there. So if the brake fluid, if your brake light comes on your dashboard, and if you come over here, there's actually a plug here on the reservoir where the brake fluid is. And inside of this little canister is like a little indicator. So when it goes low, it will tell you inside the car that the brake fluid's low. That's when the brake light comes on. The only other reason why the brake light will come on is if the emergency or parking brake is engaged, the brake light will come on. So there's two reasons why that will come on. Either way, it's not good, either one of them. Disengage the parking brake or make sure it's disengaged. If it is, then it's going back to the reservoir. So the reservoir is saying it's low. Now, if the reservoir is low, if you open it up and it looks low, there's a reason for that. We've got a couple things going on here. So I suggest leaving it alone. If you get in the car, you push on the brake pedal, you have no brakes, and your reservoir looks low, get a tow. Go to a shop. Don't try to drive it with no brakes. Or if you push on the brake pedal, you still have brakes, it seems low, there's probably something going on. So there might be a problem with the hose, there might be some problem with the brake caliper, or your brakes themselves are low, meaning the pad life. So we're going to walk over here and I'm going to talk about brake pads for a second. This right here is a rotor, okay? Most cars today, cars, SUVs, trucks are using the rotor and pad setup, okay? So this rotor, if you look at it, is kind of rusty and crusty and old. I wouldn't consider this to be a good rotor by any means. This is what the brake pads are going on to stop. So this right here is a caliper bracket. This is a brake caliper. This is the brake pad sandwiched in here on each side. All right, now this is a caliper that's not hooked up. This is what it looks like when it's hooked up on the car. So the brake caliper has a hose coming off of it, and the hose is hooked to the brake lines of your car. Sometimes the hoses can get bubbles in them and they can burst. And that can happen on cars, and the hose would have to be replaced. It doesn't mean the caliper is bad, just the hoses. Sometimes when you let your car go long enough where you start grinding your brakes and they start making noise on the rotors, essentially the brake pad is gone and it's metal on metal. What happens here is the caliper, and this is a caliper piston, it comes out so far to where it's broken. So there's a rubber boot here that once the piston comes out, it can start leaking, or the piston can't be pushed back in because it was out too far in the heat and it's just messed up. So our tools can't push it back in. And that's why if you get to the point where you have grinding brakes, you always have a chance where you're going to have to replace a brake caliper. So, and it doesn't mean you have to replace every brake caliper. You just replace the brake caliper that's bad. So really what happens here when we're doing a new set of brakes, we're pushing the piston back in because it's the fluid from the reservoir that's coming out here into the caliper and pushing the piston further out and out as the pads are in here. As they wear, the piston's pushing and the caliper's going like this, so the piston's coming out this way. So that's what brings the level down in the reservoir, which triggers and says you need brakes. So, and a lot of times there's squeak indicators on brake pads too, which are right here. When it hits the rotors, you'll hear squeak, squeak, squeak. When you hear that, you're going to need brakes. So that's pretty much the theory with brake pads and rotors. That's how this is the entire setup for that. Which we do explain in the packet here. This is actually a grinded rotor. As you can see, it looks really, really bad. This is one of the tools we use to compress the calipers back in, which pushes the fluid back up into the lines, which then the reservoir fluid raises back up. So that's why it's like you don't want to put more fluid in there, because when the tech actually does a brake job, the fluid's going to come back out. It's just going to overflow out. So it's a closed system. The fluid's not going to go anywhere unless you have a broken brake line. In the pack, I also have, that's a brand new rotor, real pretty. That's what they look like when they're brand new. These are the different variations of brake pads from new to used to grinded and gone. So you never want to get to that point because it's a safety issue. This is drum brakes, which are on some vehicles today, some trucks. They're not as widely used today as they were 20 or 30 years ago. The theory is a little bit different on drums. They actually last longer than rotors and pads do. The stopping power isn't quite as effective. So this is a kind of like an opposite way of the rotors and pads. So they have a brake cylinder here and the fluid pushes it out this way, which stops the car. So the shoes are getting pushed onto the drums this way. Okay. So we're going to move on to ABS systems on cars. ABS is a completely different system than braking. Okay, so your brakes, what I showed you, consists of your brake pad, your rotor, your caliper, but then there's also back here sensors for the ABS system right here. This is an ABS sensor. It's going to the back of the wheel and it's a magnet. And then when there's another piece that goes in here that it kind of has a gear. And when the ABS is triggered, that's what you're feeling when you push the brake pedal. So I've had a lot of young kids in here. I'm gonna go grab a rack. That have never had the ABS engaged on them before. And it can be very scary. If I have any young drivers watching Zoom right now, it normally is going to happen in the rain, in the snow. It can happen on a dry road if you stop very, very, very fast. So like let's say a deer jumps out in front of you, you got to stop fast. You're pushing on that brake extremely hard. ABS can engage. It's going to happen more in the snow though. It happened to me last week where when you go to brake, you hear a sound that you've never heard in your car before. And it's like, doo, 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 and it like moves your foot when it's on the brake. And it's loud and it will scare you. But the theory is that you're supposed to keep your foot steady on the brake, keep your hands on the steering wheel, and the computer of the car should straighten the car out and stop it for you. And I hate to say this, sometimes you might have to use 2 feet on the brake when that engages for the younger drivers. So like I said, the ABS system is completely different than the brake system. ABS is analog brake system is what that means. If you turn on your car and your ABS light is on the dashboard, and I'm not talking about when you just turn the key on, I'm talking about when the car is fully on idling. If you have an ABS light on, your ABS is not working. That's what that means. That means there's something wrong with your ABS system and you need to have it checked out because there's something wrong. Same thing with the airbag light too. So if your car's idling and the airbag light's on, most likely it's not working. That means there's something wrong with the system. So, and sometimes on some different cars, when the check engine light comes on, the traction control light will come on too. That is just the way the manufacturer gets your attention to go to a shop to have it fixed. It automatically will push a traction control light or a VSC light. So it doesn't mean there's something wrong with that particular system, but the car automatically does that. All right. I'm going to talk about next. We're going to skip the changing the tire to the end. So what we're going to talk about next is, let's talk about jumping a vehicle and batteries. Now this particular car, the battery, you can't see it in the engine compartment because it's not in the engine compartment. So most cars, the battery is going to be over here or over here. This car doesn't have it in the front at all, but it does have contact points for jumping the vehicle where you see here, this is a contact point for jumping the car. I'm going to walk over to a different car that's a better example for the battery, because this particular battery is under the seat. So in Cadillacs, it's the same way. Some Equinox and Acadias are under the floorboards of the cars, but like I said, there's always contact points for jumping a vehicle up front. Now on this vehicle, this is the battery here. Now, as we look at this, and I just want to say, touching the battery is not going to hurt you, okay? You're not going to get electrocuted or shocked or anything like that. So this is the battery terminals right here. And if you grab onto them, see how tight this is? It should never move. If you ever have a wiggle or a move in there, that's a big problem. Your car can have a problem starting. So this is actually a pretty decently clean battery connection here. On the picture, as you can see, if you ever see something like this, you most likely will need a new battery terminal because the acid is eaten away so bad in there, you're not going to really get super great contact with that. When jumping a vehicle, right here, you can see the red. That means positive. Any indication of red on one side would mean positive. This battery shows the plus mark here, which means that is your positive side. And there is the negative side here, which is a little dirty. That is your negative, and it has the black cord, which would be the negative cord. So you would take the alligator claws, you would hook it on the red, which is positive, to the positive, think here, and then the negative to the negative there. Then you would go over to the other car and hook it up the same way. Never touch them together. So there's a couple ways of doing this. Some people turn on the lights on the car to make sure it's getting a good connection. But sometimes the battery will let the lights turn on anyway if there's just a tiny bit of juice. So you might have to adjust the alligator claws on the battery a few times to get a really good connection to get it jump. Now, let's say it won't jump, then it's probably not the battery. It's probably the starter on the car that's having a problem. So most batteries from the brand new cars from the dealer or manufacturer will last 5 or 6 years when you first buy a car. When you get an aftermarket battery, it's usually tagged what the warranty is. So most aftermarket batteries are last anywhere from 2 to 4 years, depending on the type of battery is, depending on the warranty on it, depending on how much you spend. So there's a cheap line, and then there's a mid-grade, and there's more expensive. So, and batteries can go bad before that. So like during the quarantine, this past year, there have been a lot of my customers that let their cars sit for 6, 7 months and never started. Cars don't like sitting. Cars don't like ever being not started. So my suggestion to people, once I've heard that multiple times, is start your car once a week, drive it around the block 2 or 3 times, not a big deal, and park it. Because the car needs to run. It needs to have the battery charged. It needs to have fluids moving, wheels moving. There's so many bearings and so much stuff going on inside a car. It needs to move at least once a week if the car's sitting dormant. So, let's see here. Oh yeah. Also, batteries have water in them. So if like the polar vortex we had 2 years ago, we saw many, many batteries that week that were actually swollen because they were frozen inside. So, and the car won't start that way. So if it gets super, super cold, where it's like -10, -20, our cars aren't rated to deal with that. So you pretty much, what I told a lot of my customers is let the car sit, 24, 48 hours, let things defrost. Once it's warmed up a little, the car will start. Again, let's talk about the cold weather and fuel also. So naturally, all cars have water in their fuel tank coming from gas stations. It happens to every car. I'm gonna come over here. This is called heat. This is something that I suggest people getting and putting in their car. It's only 12 ounces. What you do is on your next tank of full tank of fuel, just undo this, pour it inside, and what it does is it rids the extra water out of your gas tank for super cold winters like we have. It won't hurt your car at all. And I'd only use one. Don't like put 2 or 3 in. So, and I would always keep the car at a quarter tank or higher because, again, there can be water in the gas tank and it can freeze your fuel pump and then your car won't start. So this is a good preventive, especially when we have our bad winters. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about changing the tire on a car. Now, I think AAA is great service. I think they're wonderful, but it seems when you need them, sometimes, especially late at night, it might take a couple hours for them to get to work. So I think it's very important that everybody knows how to change their tire properly. Now, if you're willing to do this and you want to change your own tire, the first thing you need to do is to go to your vehicle, find your spare tire, and make sure that it's accessible, that the hardware holding it will unscrew out so you can actually get your spare tire out and it's not rusted or fused in there. If it seems like the tie down on it is rusted, get some WD-40, spray it on there, let it soak a few days, try it again. If it won't come out, go to your mechanic, see if they can release it for you. Some spare tires are under the vehicle and they need to be checked. Does it have air? Can you use the spare tire? So even with trucks underneath the vehicle, sometimes they're so rusted up there, they've been up there 5, 10 years, no one's ever touched them. So spare tires need to be checked first and foremost. Some new cars aren't even coming with spare tires. They're giving you a can of Fix-A-Flat and saying here. So that's something you need to plan on. If you don't have a spare tire, I would highly suggest, if you are worried about having a flat, go to a junkyard or go online to eBay or Amazon or something of that nature, and or offer up or something, and get yourself a rim and then go get a tire put on it so that you can use it as a spare. Obviously, it's got to be the same size that's on the car in order for it to work. So with that being said, if you do get a flat tire and you're on a highway or a busy road, at that point, your tire's probably just toast anyway. So I tell most people, slow your speed down, put your hazards on the vehicle. Go slow. People will understand that are next to you that you have a flat tire. Go slow enough so you don't have a problem. Get off the highway or get off the busy road. Ideally, if you're going to change a tire, you want to do it in a parking lot. Too many bad things happen on busy roads, and it's not necessary to change it right there. Just keep going. The other thing is some spare tires are donuts. They almost look like motorcycle tires. They have like yellow rims. I don't know if that happened. I actually did. So this is a donut tire. Now, if you notice the tread size difference between this and a regular tire, it's way smaller, like almost half the size. So this type of spare tire donut, which is very common in cars today, and they can be real ugly. They can have a red rim or a yellow rim, or black like this. So these things, you're not really supposed to go over, I want to say 35 or 40 miles an hour. It's really low. So once you do, if this is your spare, this is really just the spare tire to get you to the tire shop or your mechanic. This is not, let's get on the highway, let's drive around in a week with this on. This is not safe for everyday driving. This is a pinch tire. You're using it in a pinch to get your other tire fixed, put this back in your trunk. This is not long term. This is only like 1 to 2 day long term. That's it. So. All right. Now, the tools that the manufacturers give you to change a tire. This is a jack and a small little tire iron. Now, so many people have problems using these. These jacks can slide, they can move, they can twist over, they can bend, and this little tire iron is not going to work very well for anybody, man or woman. So my first suggestion is get rid of this stuff. It's no good. Okay, it's going to hurt you, and it's going to take you 10 times longer to change a tire. What you need to do is invest once, and you can have this stuff forever, for life, and put it in your trunk. So this is what's called a 4-way. This is a tire iron. It's only like 15 bucks. And the reason why it's called a 4-way is each end is a different size for different lug nuts on cars. Comes very handy. It can work on more than one car. Because this is a car and not an SUV, this is a 2-ton jack that I have. You can get this anywhere. So you can get this at Walmart, Target, any parts store, Farm and Fleet, Amazon, Home Depot. These jacks cost $25 to $35 depending on where you're at. And you can use it for life because you're not going to use it that much where it's ever going to go bad. Now, if you have an SUV or a truck, you're going to need a 2.5 or 3-ton jack, and then the price of the jack goes up a bit. So if you have, because really it's a higher vehicle, so the neck here is going to have to go up higher. So you need a bigger jack for that. And those jacks can vary from 60 to 120. But again, it's a one-time expense and you can keep it forever. The bigger jacks you can also use on regular cars too. So it's almost like a universal, but the smaller jacks you can only use on cars. So we're going to take our tools over here. Now, if you have a, let's say we're going to pretend that this tire is flat right here on the right front. And the first thing we're going to do is loosen the lug nuts while the car is down. Okay. And the reason for that is on some cars, if it's jacked up already, you're not going to be able to break the lug nuts because the wheel's just going to spin. So you take your four-way, you find the right location, and then you turn just a little bit. You don't want to undo the whole tire while it's sitting here, or all the lug nuts. You just want to crack them loose so that it's easy to do once it's up, jacked up. All right, and for those who don't have a lot of upper body strength, these four-ways are great because you can actually put your feet into it like this and move it and seem to tighten it. So that it works really well for leverage. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we gotta find the jack point on the car. So I'm gonna grab my mirror real quick so you can see this. All right. Now, this is what's called a pinch weld right here, where this line is. This right here is plastic on the car. So you see how there's like a cutout here? This is where the factory jack would go, is under here. That's what these cutouts are for. But this pinch weld right here, this is where all the metal meets under the car. This is the strongest point at jack up is right here. Now, if we go to the back, it's going to be the same way. So if the tire in the rear is flat, we jack up over here. Okay. And here's the pinch weld right here that you're going to jack up on. Now, if it's a truck, you would have a large frame that's metal here, and you could just jack up on the frame. But most cars and SUVs are going to have this pinch weld here. And yeah, you're going to have to bend over probably and look like this to find it. You're not going to have a mirror. So it's always good to keep a towel or a blanket in the car, because if you get a flat, you're going to get your. All right. So how to work this? These jacks are super simple. You have your handle. This piece here, you're going to make sure it's tight. All these jacks have it. You put it inside here, lock it down. Now you got to position the jack on the pinch weld that we saw. All right, and then we just start jacking it up. It's way faster than the equipment that the dealer gives you in the car. So, and it's super easy and fast. And I can use one hand doing it. And it's safe. It's not a scissor jack that's going to bend and drop down on you. All right. So we got to get the front end high enough where you have clearance of the tire to come out. So now, see, jack's tight. We go back with our tire iron over here. We finish loosening up our lug nuts and get them off. Some cars have hubcaps that you have to pull off to do this. Some cars have wheel locks. Now, if this car does not, some cars have wheel locks where one out of the lug nuts is going to look different on the top, almost like a puzzle piece. And there should be a key in the car for it. And the key would fit on the four-way just to get that one lug nut off. And then once you get that one lug nut off, you take the key, set it aside, get the rest of the lug nuts off. Some cars have wheel locks on all five. And the purpose of the wheel locks is so nobody steals your rims and tires. So not all cars have them. Some do. And if you don't know where your wheel lock is, and you have wheel locks on your cars, and you don't know where the instrument is to take it off, you better go to the shop and either try to get one or have them extracted. If you have a flat tire, you're getting a tow. You can't change it. So nobody, not even AAA, can get a wheel lock off if you're dead on the road with a flat tire. They don't have the equipment to do it. So these tire irons are great. Teenagers can use them without a problem. All right, got the last one off. So then the next thing we do, we grab the tire, we roll it over here, we put it right next to the jack under the car like that. So the safety is always coming first. Let's say something happens, I don't know. Never want to take a chance. In case the jack does fail, it falls, it's falling on the rim, it's not falling on you. So that's what we got. Then at this point, we put the spare tire on the car and we go backwards. And now you can see the brake rotors on this car. This is the wheel studs here. So, all right, now we're gonna put the tire back on. We're gonna pretend this is the spare tire. And yeah, especially for us ladies, we're gonna have to sit down and do this, get the right leverage. And you're gonna have to position it properly. Okay. Kind of holding it on the bottom of my foot a little bit. I'm gonna start one lug nut here. I'm gonna go opposite over here. There is no rules to it. You kind of opposite is good to start, and then just kind of hand put them on. You don't want to cross thread them, so make sure they go on smoothly. There we go. Grab our tire iron, find a position. All right, then we start spinning it, and we're going to get it tight, but we're not going to get it super tight. It's tight enough. See how fast this is? And you don't need anybody's help to do it. You have the right tools. It's just like anything in life. You have the right tools. You can do it safely and quickly. All right. Now that it's somewhat tight, we're going to lower the car down. And how to do that is this way. You pull the handle back out. This little silver piece here, we're going to release the hydraulic of the jack down. So I'm going to do a little bit slow. It's not a race. There we go. That's how fast it is. And then tighten it up right away once it's down. Okay. Now we go back one last time. Make sure I'm always losing my spot. Put a little elbow grease into it and tighten it up. So, all right. Okay. So that was fast. It wasn't hard by any means. Just have to know the proper point of jacking the car up on that pinch weld, which I should have a couple diagrams in the packet. Next, this is a valve stem on a tire right here. This is where the air gets put in on a tire. And a lot of cars have what's called Tpms sensors, which is a tire monitor sensor that will illuminate on your dashboard. And I'm sure it's happened to everybody's car in the past month or two because of the weather change. It's going to happen in the spring and towards the winter. So as the weather changes, the air fluctuates in the tires. Now, this is where the air in the tire goes. This is actually an old school tire gauge right here. And newer ones are digital, but this is what we've always used. You push it on here. Once it'll tell you what type of air pressure is in here. So this is like, it's got like 33, 34 pounds of air in it, which is probably good. If you don't know what type of air, how much air belongs in your car, you walk over to the driver's door. every car has information about your tires. This is the size that belongs on the car of tires. This is the PSI that should be on the front tires in the back. Some cars are different for front to back. This one is 30 and 30. So if in doubt, all the information is always right here. Every car I've ever seen, it's always right there. Okay. Okay, so it's a funny picture. It shows the jack up points of the vehicle that you can use. And it shows different variations of it. There's the pinch weld there. So I know it's funny looking to jack up on a weld like that, but there's the wheel lock, what a lot of them look like right there. Like I said, it almost looks like it's a pattern. That's the key to open it. So if you don't have that key, there's going to be a problem. There's our donut tire, fix a flat. Now, if you ever put that in a tire, you will ruin the tire. I mean, it will air it up for what you need to do, but it chemically breaks down the sidewall of the tire. This is the sidewall of the tire, is right here. It's this section in the front. So this is what's called a sidewall. Now, if you puncture it, there's no saving a tire if you puncture the sidewall. If you get a nail right here on the edge, you can't fix the tire. The only time you can fix the tire is when the actual tread right here, if there's a nail or something in the tread, then it can be patched or repaired or plugged. But if it's anywhere basically from here down, there's no fixing it, or on the opposite side. So. All right, we have a section in here about tire wear and vehicle alignments. So if you were ever, like, let's say you were driving your car last year and it was really good in the snow, and this year you're like, why is my car not good in the snow? It doesn't feel right. Last year it just went through. Well, you might want to have your alignment checked, because if your alignment's knocked off a hair, it will be fighting in the snow. The tires will be. So this is talking about correct wear. This is underinflated, which means you don't have enough air in your tires. Overinflated, you'll start wearing the center. Misaligned left or right. And we walk over to our tires over here. You ever see your tires look like this, where the wear pattern is different on them? Like right here. That. So you could see the tread on this side, but this tread is pretty much gone. That means that this car needed an alignment. Same with this over here. So the tread is pretty much gone here. You can still see some tread here. The alignment is off. So if you ever see your tire and it looks like it's starting to get like no tread and like bare rubber, you need an alignment. You should never have to get that far though. So the steering wheel should always be straight on the car. If it's off just a little, either direction, you most likely need an alignment. Now, this is kind of a funny picture, but I don't know how Blue Island is up there, but here in the Fox Valley area, we do get flooded streets. So I like to remind the younger people, do not drive your car through something like this. The water can get sucked up into the engine and you can lose your engine. Like the engine will lock up. It will be gone. So this is what's called hydrolocking a car. This talks about warning lights. We kind of went over this already. If you see a maintenance light come on or a wrench, that's not a check engine light. That means that your scheduled maintenance through the manufacturer, the car should be checked at different intervals. A flashing check engine light means the car's most likely misfiring. There's a difference between having a check engine light on solid the whole time. It can happen. The car can feel normal, like nothing's going on. But if you get a check engine light and it starts flashing, you need to get to a shop immediately. Most of the check engine lights on the car is usually for emissions related items. not everybody in the state of Illinois has to go through emissions, only us in the Chicagoland area. So if you ever see a temperature light on in red, that means you better shut your car down. Not all cars have temperature gauges today inside for the engine. So if, I don't know if I have one in here actually. So a temperature gauge for the temperature of the engine is almost like a gas gauge where it's gonna be like a level and the center is operating temperature. So if it ever goes further off center to the warmer position, that's a problem. Most cars in the temperature area should be midpoint. So if it ever starts creeping up to 3/4 or even higher, you need to shut off the car and get it towed. So this pretty much wraps it up for today. This is the basics. I can take questions if the library wants us to do that.
Hi, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to ask them. But I do want to say thank you to Wicked Wrench Co. and to say thank you to Jaime and Naomi.
Thank you.
You guys were great presenters. It was amazing watching you. I've learned a lot. I hope everybody else have learned a lot.
I hope you did. If you take away one good thing, that's what makes me happy. So that's why we
Oh
do
yeah.
these.
I'm gonna look like a badass changing a tire now.
Good, good. That's what I want to hear.
We got one question. How many miles are the donut tires good for?
Not many. Not many at all. So, and I can't express that enough. The donut tires are just a tire to use from the point of this happening home and then to a tire shop. That is it. Those are not good tires to be rolling around on. They're not safe.
Okay. Another question is, when you're jumping a car, is there any other locations you should ground?
Okay, so the ground on the battery works completely fine. All right, that's why it's there. You can also use a different ground on the car, a metal piece. So, I mean, it just depends on the vehicle. I've heard several different people say different things as far as jumping. The way I look at it, you know, the battery's there, it's got a negative, it's got the positive. You are completely fine just using those, okay? So, otherwise you can grab onto a bolt or something solid metal as a ground if you want to as an alternate.
People are asking about jumpers. Should they use a traditional jumper cable or a jumper pack, or use ones that go through a cigarette lighter?
Okay, good question. Jumper packs are great. They've got to be charged. They're a little bit more expensive. They're nice to have. Jumper cables, you know, obviously you have to position another car. You have to have another car around, so it's more convenient to have a jumper pack. I have actually never used the one in the cigarette lighter before. So I don't know much about them. I have heard people rave about them, saying they're great. I would maybe check YouTube and see how those work. I've never used one of those, so I can't really vouch for that.
Okay, is that everyone's questions? I see Beth. Okay, so I see Beth asked about car lighter jumpers, and are they making USB jumpers yet?
Yes, they are. They are. But again, I've never used one, so I don't know how good they are. If they work all the time, I'm not real sure about that.
Okay. So I think that was it. Okay, and yes, guys, the recording will be available. I want to say we'll post them either later on today or definitely tomorrow. And we'll also be emailing the packets. I'm sorry about that miscommunication.
Okay.
Wait, one last question that popped up.
Yeah.
Dealership before or also independent mechanic. Which problems would you go to the dealership for? Which ones would you see an independent mechanic for?
Oh, wow. That's great. I've never been asked that. Okay. So dealers are great for recalls, warranty work, and if you have computer problems. So, meaning shops don't have the type of computer systems, the technology that most dealers have. The dealers are getting their software from the manufacturers. Independent shops have to pay a lot of money in order to get a fraction of what they get. So, again, if you have a recall, obviously you go to the dealer because you're taking care of it for the manufacturer, obviously. If there's something going on with the car that has something to do with any of the computer systems, I suggest going to the dealer. Meaning, like a power control module or a computer update, something of that nature. But independent shops can usually take care of just about everything else. I mean, you could take your car to an independent shop, and then if they say, hey, you know what, there's something going on with this, the dealer's going to be able to read into it more if it's a very, very, very severe problem. Independent shops can do engines, they can do transmissions, they can do anything bumper to bumper. So I mean, I want to say that our capabilities are about 90% of what the dealers have.
One more question is, are you going to have any classes here at the shop?
Yes. So right now I am going to probably take a break for probably 3 or 4 months because I have been running classes during COVID, small classes, but it'd probably be summer before I do another class. But we always, if you go to our social media at Wicked Wrench CO on Facebook or Instagram, we always post advanced for class signups.
And the last question I saw was, do you also do motorcycle maintenance?
No, we don't. No motorcycle stuff here. No diesels, just cars, gas running cars.
Would you say aftermarket parts are just as good as regular OEM parts?
It depends on what it is. So, honestly, it depends on the part. Usually, when you get a part, okay, I had this conversation with a customer yesterday about a water pump for his car. He says, what kind of warranty does your shop have? I said, well, our shop carries a 2-year, 24,000 mile warranty. Now, the car had about 86,000 miles and it needed a water pump. He said, do you suggest I go with aftermarket or dealer? Okay, so there's pros and cons on both ends. The aftermarket's going to be a little bit cheaper on your wallet, but the dealer part, believe it or not, is good. It lasted 86,000 miles to begin with. If you get a part from a dealer, it's going to probably most likely last another 86,000 miles. It's the same amount that the first one did. So some people can't afford it. The difference in the money of the parts. So like, here's a good example. A car that might need a CV axle through an independent shop, the CV axle might be $125 aftermarket. If you go to a dealer, the CV axle might be $465 for the same part. You're going to get more longevity out of the dealer parts, but it's right now, is it going to break the bank to do it? So.
And also, the last question I saw was brake noises. If you hear random squeals and squeaks from your brakes, should you have them inspected right away?
Yeah, so, okay, Toyotas are notorious, and I love Toyotas, but they get rust around the rotors that hit the caliper sometimes, and when they back up, you'll hear, It happens a lot with Toyotas. It doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong. It could just be rust buildup. But I always tell people, rather be safe than sorry, because any kind of weird sounds or smells, you definitely want to have checked out. Definitely. At least give you a peace of mind.
Okay. I think that was the last of the questions, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Oh, it was one last one. Beth said she needed windshield wipers, and did you have a recommendation for them? She said
Actually,
the dealer can't replace after.
My camera guy has a good recommendation.
So we've had really good luck with the Michelin brand, the silicone blades. Those seem to hold up for a good 2 years, if not more. And they're also, you can buy them at Walmart. I want to say they're around $18 to $20. And it's not a metal frame, so until the winter time, they don't freeze and hold position. They flex a lot more, so they help out a lot around here.
Okay.
And
Well, thank you.
one last question was, can brakes squeak after being changed?
Yes, they can. So it depends on the pad material or the rotor. Yes, I mean, cars aren't, they're metal and pieces are metal. Sometimes they can still make a little bit of noise. So if something sounds more like a grind, that's a problem. So, you know, whoever, if you have a squeak and you feel uncomfortable with it, you can always have it double checked by the shop that did it. I'm sure they won't take offense to it, and just to, again, for a peace of mind.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. Wow,
Okay.
that was really amazing. Thank you again for speaking. Thank you for
Yeah.
doing this tutorial. I
Absolutely.
loved it, and you had a lot of compliments in the comments. So I'm gonna go ahead and speak for everybody and say they loved it too.
Great, wonderful. Everybody have a great weekend. Be safe, because I know the snow that's coming is going to be rough tonight. So, thank you.
All right, bye guys.